Okay, so welcome back to this week's podcast. And as always, I love to do interviews and I love to do guest interviews with people that are sales experts that have been in the sales industry for a long period of time. And I'm really pleased I've got a great guest with you today, Dan Hicks, who I got to meet a number of weeks back at an event. Dan's been selling into IT, or selling IT solutions, I should say, he'll explain in a moment, I'm sure, for more years than he cares to remember. But I thought, right, let's get Dan on the podcast. Let's get to him talking about his sales journey over the number of the past years. He's only a young man, so we'll talk about now. We'll talk about the journey that Dan's had in his sales career, how he goes about trying to sell IT services to people, and just talk through the elements around sales in general. So, welcome to the podcast, Dan Hicks.
It's an absolute pleasure, James. Thanks very much for having me.
Oh, no worries at all. So, look, I've done a brief introduction of you, but for those that don't know you, tell people a bit more about you and your career, and yeah, you've been selling for a long time, right?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Dan. I've been selling IT services now since 1996, so nearly 30 years. But my sales journey actually started a little bit before that. I was actually, I left university. I studied art and design at university, and then did a series of kind of post-university jobs, as most people do, factory work, all that kind of stuff. And I actually got the opportunity to go and work in a furniture shop. I lived in Hampshire for a while. I'm originally from Gloucestershire, but I was living in Hampshire, worked in a furniture shop, and it's long since gone now. There's a company called Courts Furnishers. And I actually, Bruce Forsyth used to do that.
I remember. I do remember.
Yeah, but we're showing our age now, James. We're showing our age. And I'd never really gone into sales. I never even thought sales as a kind of career. But I'd sort of worked my way up and ended up becoming assistant manager, the youngest assistant manager in Courts history, 21. Had a lot of responsibility as a pretty young person back then. And it really gave me the bug to sell, and look, I'm selling beds and carpets and,
furniture,
wardrobes and stuff. But you know what? I really learned a huge amount from selling. And one of the things that I learned was an older woman came in to buy a load of furniture. And I actually, when we did the deal, and in those days it was you'd fill out an actual order form, and it was very antiquated. But one of the things that I learned from, the face-to-face sales in a shop was just the fact that I would always say thanks for the order. And that really resonated with me. And here we are, over 30 years later. This sweet old lady said, "You're the only person that's ever said thanks for an order that I've placed," and that really resonated with me. But fast forward, I left Hampshire, left obviously that job, and I was kind of milling around, wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Went back to live with my folks. And my mum found an advert in the local newspaper looking for telemarketers working for a company in Swindon. And so I went for the interview, got the job. And I think the first couple of months there, I was setting appointments for like Hertz leasing, people, car stuff. And was in the office one day, and the managing director, Gary, came in and said, "We've got a new project." And I was like, "Okay, great." And it's called the NetStar project. And he said, "I want you," I can't remember the names now, it's so long ago. "I want you to basically be the telemarketers for this new campaign that we're doing." And I said, "Yeah, fine." He said, "You guys know a bit about technology." So anyway, this campaign was for a company in Cirencester called Star Internet, which is, I was living in Cirencester at the time. And what Star Internet did was they were one of the first companies to do internet to desktop. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is where the journey kind of picks up and where it actually really starts. And internet to desktop. So what does that really mean? So back in the day, 95, 96, businesses would have multiple internet connections into old CompuServe accounts. Yep. And, they'd have God knows how many modems and all sorts of, it was the technology of the day. But what these two brothers, Josh and Ben White, had done is they created this all-in-one technology box that was a firewall and email server and a centralized internet connection. And it did away with all of the the multiple lines coming in. So I was telemarketing for that campaign, and I got a phone call from one of the sales guys one day, and he said, "What are you doing after work?" I was, probably just going home. He's like, "Right, meet me in the pub. Need to talk to you." And got headhunted. So I left the telemarketing job and went to work for Star Internet directly.
Yeah.
Started off as cold calling. I was setting my own appointments, closing my own deals. Um, Star Internet at the time were 12 people. I think I was employee number 12, working in a little place in Cirencester, an old building that they converted. And I stayed there for 10 years and really learned my trade, met some incredibly talented salespeople, incredibly talented engineers and marketeers. And yeah, so I stayed there for 10 years. And in the end, Star Internet went from 12 people to, I think, close to 600 people worldwide.
Wow.
Well, they set up a separate company called Message Labs. And Message
Yes, I remember Message Labs. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was kind of at the rock. Well, I absolutely was, because I remember the sketch for Message Labs was done in a pub, literally on a back of a cigarette packet. I was in the pub one day with the managing director and the technical director, Mark, and they were literally sketching out how it could work. So I was there, I saw it. And Message Labs got sold for $500 million, or the Message Labs group, of which I was a shareholder. So I was very fortunate to be part of that journey. And, it's one of those things I always say that I learned more in those 10 years than I ever did at school or university.
Let me just take you back actually as well, because obviously what you did there with Star was incredible. But I want to take you back to the Courts moment as well, because did anyone take you under their wing when you were selling at Courts? Because obviously if you were a young lad basically, and obviously those sort of shops get a lot of footfall and a lot of people. And by the way, the reason I say it is because it's one of my pet frustrations is when I go into a lot of those shops, the people there generally don't really sell very well. So did anyone take you under their wing and sort of take you back in those Court days? Or?
Yeah, so there was a chap that became the manager, and he was an old guy back then, and I mean it's a bit cringy now, because on the shop floor that you had all the sofas laid out and the beds were upstairs, and it was a bit like Are You Being Served, if you remember.
Yeah.
It was like that. And the manager there was a chap called Eddie Waring, not the rugby player, but he just used to sit in this little cubicle and chain smoke all day. It just goes, it's like a sign of the times. But he was great. He was really old school, very charming. And yeah, I suppose he did take me under his wing, really. And I just sort of, a lot of it is kind of common sense, really. You say hello to people, you're nice to people, you don't crowd their space.
Yep.
You let them breathe, and you could notice a pattern, actually. They might come in looking for a new mattress, but they keep gravitating back towards a new three-piece suite. Yeah. And you look at that kind of buying behavior, and then you'd think, right, they've had enough time to browse. Now I'm going to make my move because they're going to walk out the door. So then you'd come over and say, I would never say, can I help you? I would always encourage them to test out the product, like have a sit on it, have a jump on it. In your house, this sofa is going to be jumped over by the dog and the kids. Have a bounce around, see how you get on with it, And by then, the kind of barriers had broken down, and they were willing to talk. Whereas some of the salespeople in the shop that weren't that good were, how can I help you? I'm fine, thanks. I'm just looking,
Yeah. Which is classic human behavior, isn't it? Because we protect ourselves. So I was asking people, the reason, can people say no? Because they want to cover their, whereas if you can, like you say, oh, have a sit on it. Oh, lovely to see you. The weather's a bit cold outside, isn't it? Or whatever else. So just try and open up a dialogue, isn't it? Even without there being a, do you want to buy from us? You're going to be able to build rapport.
Yes, absolutely. And, a lot of what I do is assumptive selling, assumptive closing. And, I use it even to this day, and I'll come on to that later on. But even things like, are you sure this is going to fit in your lounge? Have you taken measurements? what color are your curtains? Because this, you're assumptively closing that they're going to walk out the shop having placed an order for, that wardrobe or that bed or whatever it may be. And, the psychology of selling, I find interesting. I mean, back in those days, there weren't really any books. Certainly wasn't the internet,
Yeah.
So we're very privileged as sales professionals to have forums like what we've got now to interact. Sales has always been a bit of a kind of frowned upon, dodgy salesman and all that kind of stuff. But, as sales professionals, we've carved out a living from it. And the most important thing is we've actually helped customers.
I think it's such a good point, and I talk to people a lot about, as you know from the work that I do, a lot about sales being problem solving. Sales is about problem solving. It's about, in your case, whether it's with Core or whether it's with Star, someone wants to be able to have connection to the internet, go and do what they want to do, or someone wants to, to be able to literally have a new 3-piece suite to replace what they've got right now in their front room. Doesn't matter. You're solving a problem and understanding them. And I always talk, problem and understand. If you understand what's driving them to be in that position, you're going to be in a far better position to then, it's not always works, but you're going to be in a far better position then to get them to that next stage of consideration.
Yeah, a dear friend of mine, Howard, who's also a sales professional in IT. That's how I met him when I worked at Star Internet. He came up with a great one-liner. It doesn't matter whether you're selling battleships or paperclips, the process is the same. And it's so true.
Yeah. Yeah, he's very right. He's very right. So that experience at Star then, so you obviously had that experience that was your first taste of sort of selling sort of IT back, I'm guessing, in sort of the early 2000s then, really, at that sort of time.
Yeah, so I joined in 97, October 97, I joined.
And I guess, and I remember, because I'm the same, and we're a similar sort of age, I remember the internet in 1996 being at that early stage, and I remember a few people saying, oh, it won't last, there's a fad, it will go through. But and ever since, you've built a career since then. And what's your... because selling IT services is tough. There's a lot of people that obviously find it a challenge. I mean, what's your, you've obviously had a great career doing that over the course of the last 20 years or so. What's been the secret, do you think, to your sales success over that period?
It's a really good question, and I think it's. I mean, this might sound really old school, but it's charm. If you can tell a story, and if you can tell it well, people will engage and listen. Okay. I get sold to all the time. I have people ring me up trying to sell me stuff, in a work environment. And a lot of people, they miss the person. They miss the personality. They're more interested in going through a sales process. If I could solve this problem for you today, Mr. Customer, will you sign up? I don't know anything about that guy. That guy doesn't know anything about me. Okay. And I find things like that quite off-putting. Build the rapport first. That is, that is key for me. If you understand the person and obviously understand the problem, you're going to get the sale. Not all the time, but you're going to be in a good place to get the sale.
I think that's such a powerful statement what you just said there, and actually I think it's so critical to the sales journey that, like you say, that most salespeople, again, I always say a lot of people sell badly, and they sell badly because they have this intention of, I've got what I've got, I'm just going to get it out to the other person, and I'm just going to get them through. But couldn't have put it better. Understand the person, understand the problem, and if you do that, you're in. You might not every win, you're never going to win every deal, but you're going to be far better chance to win than you are to not. I mean, it's brilliant advice.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's, again, it boils down to that sort of rapport building and all that kind of stuff. But you've got to be a bit of a chameleon when you're on a call with a prospect. Okay. You've got to sort of ebb and flow with them. And, even to this day, we've got customers that one day are really, they might be having a bad day. They might be having a bad week. You just don't know, but you've got to adapt. You've got to be malleable. And, I've learned so much from, great salespeople. A lot of you won't know the names, but people like Chris Topman, James Hathaway, Gary Gleed, people that were in my peer group. Some of them were
Yeah.
directors, some of them were, same kind of level as me, account manager or new business manager or whatever. But, they really understood their craft. And I think back incredibly fondly to those days because we didn't really know what we were doing, but we kind of by osmosis did, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. None of us were sales professionals. We were just a bunch of kids, really, that were good at articulating a story and building rapport. And we did really, really, really well. But now I can reflect on those times and think, actually, we were sales professionals. We just didn't know it.
When you look back at some of those names you mentioned, obviously I don't know myself, but was there anything in particular that stuck out to you from those guys? Was there anything particular phrases or ways they did things? Obviously, you mentioned a couple of people there that just had this incredible knack for being able to do. Was there anything in particular that stood out for you, or any one, one of them
Personality.
that took them under your wing and sort of
Yeah.
helped you as well as Eddie had done at courts?
It was their personality, you know. It was not only the fact that they could solve a problem, but they could get on with somebody, you know.
Yeah.
And again, I get sales calls all the time. And I think if you're too kind of flamboyant and a bit too sort of cheeky, it's off putting.
Yeah.
You've got to build that rapport, you've got to build that connection. And, it's no different to kind of holding court when you're talking with friends or family and just engaging and telling a story. And if you can tell a story and articulate yourself in a way that people start to gain a bit of trust, start to think, quite like this person, I want to hear more, you know. You might have the best solution or the cheapest solution or a combination of both. But if you can't hold a story and hold a conversation, you've got to work really hard to get your point across.
Yeah, you're quite right, and it's one of those elements of being able to have. I talk a lot about emotional intelligence. The emotional intelligence to be able to spot and to look at the signals. So when someone's tuned out versus when they're tuned in, and those elements, and it's key. But so to go back, someone's listening to this. Is let's say you got a young salesperson that and we there's a lot of people that obviously IT is a big, very popular service in the UK. There's a lot of money spent on IT across. What would your advice be to this sort of, let's say they just not long left university, maybe a couple of years ago, and they're building their career in IT sales, and especially with the threat of AI, because, the challenge, the AI is a great thing because obviously it's presenting us huge opportunities in terms of being able to save time, but it also presents some risks for people that are a bit younger as well, because if they don't apply themselves, you could argue an AI robot will sell more effectively than they will if they haven't got the communication skills. So what's your view? What's your advice to someone that's a bit younger that's going through that sort of journey now that you were 20 years ago?
Yeah, I mean that's a really great question. I think we use AI to help us sell. We're I currently work for Inflection Point. We're a managed services provider, and AI is a big part of what we do for customers. Don't work against it, work with it. AI, certainly things like Microsoft Copilot really helps me in my role. If I'm having a discovery call with a prospect or an account management call with a customer, I'll always stick on Microsoft Copilot, and it will do all the heavy lifting for me. It will do it basically gives me my to-do list, okay, after the meeting. It's incredibly clever. Some of the new tools that we're using for AI outreach, don't be afraid of them, embrace them, build them into part of your outreach arsenal, okay? But what would I say to a person just joining? Interesting anecdote here, actually. I got a CV through, I don't know, it must be 3 or 4 months ago, and this particular individual had done all of the top tier sales process training, okay? Brought in business, done really well, gone through all of them. I mean, I'm old school NLP, spin, all of that, Neil Rackham school of selling. But when I spoke to this person, they didn't have a personality, They were academically very good, but they didn't really have a personality. So learn your personality. If you've got a good sense of humor, play on it, If you're empathetic, play on it. All of those things. Create your own persona. Training. Look, you could teach let's say, an accountant or a technical person sales training, but they still might not be very good at it. And
Yep.
no disrespect to technical people or accountants, obviously, but they're a certain personality type. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. They're conscientious.
Develop your personality. Develop your origin story.
I think it's a really great point, and like you say, become someone. I talk to salespeople about becoming curious, be curious about other people, and you need to be someone that's got a story, got a story, got a journey yourself. As you just want to get back to you said about Copilot and some of the other tools.
Just very quickly on that, there's a great line that I heard recently: "Listen with fascination."
Yeah, love that. Really. Again, just a real. And Brian done some of these now, so we can use them in some shorts. But yeah, some great points in there, and I think you're right. Going back to what you said about the AI part and Copilot. So obviously someone's selling they've got an IT business at the moment. You mentioned that Copilot is helping you. I think you're right about working with AI rather than fighting it.
Yeah.
Although I do have a viewpoint around how I think the world is going to go into sort of two camps, one into a human engagement camp and one into an AI sort of camp. But what are some of the top two or three, tips you've got from someone using Copilot, for example, if they're not using Copilot right now, but they see it on their desktop and they're a Microsoft user, what would you say would be top two or three things you'd be saying, look, you should be doing this, this, and this just to help you?
Yeah, I mean, Copilot for me. So Copilot, this just to sort of qualify, Copilot, you do get a free Copilot license with, like, if you've got a Microsoft account, it's not full fat Copilot. You've got to buy Copilot. Okay.
Yeah.
But the way that I use it is I will always record the call using Copilot, and I can then interrogate Copilot as an AI. And Copilot is basically ChatGPT. Okay. Microsoft bought a 51% stake in ChatGPT. So it's OpenAI, ChatGPT, but it's a walled garden. So it's only interrogating your internal Microsoft systems. Okay. That's really clear. It's really important to point that out. Okay. Now, what I would do is I would interrogate it and say, show me the summary of this call. And you can do this in flight. You don't have to wait till the end of the call. Give me the top 5 points from, let's say the customer is called Claire. Give me the top 5 points from Claire now. And within 2 seconds, it will say, Claire has got this issue, this problem. She's with this provider, et cetera, et cetera. What I can then do is I can copy any of those bullet points into an email and say, write Claire an email explaining this bullet point. So Copilot will write the email for me, okay? And it will then basically, if it's something really important, I would write it myself, okay? If it's just hey Claire, here's the notes from the meeting, let Copilot do it. It's pointless me with my, sausage typing away. Get AI to do it. You don't need to worry.
There's just some simple things that can save people time that they can then use for other forms of, like you say, of prospecting and engaging and to go and find opportunities. So
and again, just to expand on that, when I started, we had one CRM system called Goldmine, which I still think is the best CRM system ever made. And we didn't have any of this clever integration with things like HubSpot and Apollo and all of the really clever tooling that we've got today as sales professionals. So don't ever be afraid of it.
It's a great point. But what is your view though, that in terms of someone at my door, but what is your view though of how sales has changed in the last, or has it? And you'd be interested to get your view. In the last 20 years, do you think sales has changed in any way from where it is and to where it is now? Do you think it will change in the next 5 to 10 years?
I really don't, actually. And a really funny story. So we had a lead come through a couple of months ago for a company, and so we've got a really defined sales process. Okay. We take the customer on a journey. And I know that sounds a bit trite, but we if the customer wants to come to the table and do a discovery call and then wants to go through the whole sort of engagement process with us, we very rarely have to close at inflection point, because we've invested so much time with the customer. It's a bit like the assumptive close, have a jump on the sofa, you know, what color is the color going to match you, you know, the carpet and the curtains, all that kind of stuff. But we had a lead come in, and we took this company through a journey. And I was really racking my brains with this customer. I thought I recognise the name, I really do. And I was speaking to their MD, he's a younger guy, and I said, "Can you have a look in your systems? You know, can you search in your email for my name?" And there was an email from me back in the year, I think it was 2000 or 2001. So they were a customer of mine when I was at Star Internet.
Wow.
They're now a customer, and we were having a laugh because the MD was 9.
Brilliant.
My point being, my pitch, the way that I do things has not really changed. The technology that I use like AI. We use a great sort of interactive microsite tool. You know, if anything, it's the technology is helping me. Okay, it's not hindering me. Even the ability to do video calls, that wasn't a thing 10, 15 years ago.
But in terms of what I was also thinking as well is in terms of, so you think, you know, it's not changed. And I think it's, the only thing I say sometimes is the internet has changed things a little bit. Because what, you know, if you remember years ago when maybe we would sell directly face to face, or, you know, with the internet, whereas actually what the internet's now done is it's made much more information visible for people. So I think that people, by the time they are having a conversation with you, if they've looked at who you are and what you're about, are much more aware of what you are. But then I also think, like, the element, like you say, of sales, and this is the same issue, is that, you know, people feel like they've got to be able to trust people, they've got to be able to feel that you can deliver for them, they've got to feel like you understand them. Those elements are common. But going forward, then, fast forward 5 years, do you think sales will change in the next 5 years? If we're watching this in, you know, 2030, I mean, what would have changed, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, so because we're in a service-based industry at Inflection Point, you've got two different types of buyer. You've got a company that's never outsourced their IT before. Okay, so they are literally, you know, it's blank slate to them. You know, they don't know what they don't know. But also, some customers or prospects that I speak to might be a fifth or sixth generation managed services user. You know, they've been using outsourcing their IT for 10 years. They've had good experiences, bad experiences. So they're a bit more jaded. Okay. You get the person or the prospect that's never outsourced their IT. They're very excited to learn, you know, this is going to solve all my problems. Where you get like a third, fourth, fifth generation business that's outsourced their IT, they're a lot more guarded. You know, they're a lot more, we've heard it all before. You know, our last MSP told us that and it didn't work out. So you've got to work a bit harder. But where's it going to go in the next 5 years? I think automation is going to help us more. Okay. People, again, classic cliche, people will always buy from people. Self-service will be a thing, and we're already doing that now. What we do is we build profiles for clients. So if they're buying the same monitor and laptop and docking station all the time, we're in the process of building a portal they can just self-serve, click, 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 you know, order online. So that takes away some of the effort that I've got to do in terms of building quotes and all that stuff. But in terms of the actual art of selling, I don't think it's going to change massively because the human is always, for me, and I'm happy to be proven wrong, the human is always a constant. It has to be. You know, if you're going to sign up your company to outsource your technology and cybersecurity, you're not going to want to rely on an AI to transact that with you. You're just not.
I think you're right, and I think it's such a great point. And I think it's related to the type of areas that, you know, we both talk about selling high value business services. I think if you are buying, you know, for want of a better phrase, you know, mouses, or, you know, transactional products, it's going to become much more self-serve, like you say, because people are going to just then say, well, like you do on Amazon right now. Amazon is AI, right? It's just Jeff Bezos has made it really clever to do it. All he's doing is he's allowing you to just go and select what you want to do. But if you're selling, you know, as I say, you know, valuable services and where people are putting their whole infrastructure through someone else, I agree with you. I don't think they're going to be doing that through a robot. We might come to regret this, Dan. In 5 years' time, they'll be looking at us, go, look at those two old blokes talking about how, well, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we'll need to go and look at another industry to work in. But yeah, I just don't think anybody is going to take the plunge and go, I've never met this company. I've never met a human being from this company. Here, have the IT support for my 50 staff and all my cybersecurity and all my data. It just isn't going to happen, you know. Um,
Agreed.
I think the outreach is going to change drastically. Okay, new business is going to change drastically.
What way?
Traditionally, I'm not really an outreach guy. I'm more of an account manager. I can close business. You know, if I get leads, I can close them. But you know, I've worked with some incredible outreach, like new business people that could literally find a lead in an empty room. You know, they are that good. It's never, you know, I've more been a kind of relationship building, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
But you know, we talked a couple of weeks ago now about the new world of outreach, and we've got so much available to us. You know, writing blog posts, all the LinkedIn sales nav stuff, great tools like Dripify, Apollo, all of this. You know, we didn't have that even, I don't know, 5, 10 years ago. So if you're a really, really good high energy outreach person, the world's your oyster because you've got all these tools to support you.
Have and I say to people, you know, where I think the outreach is going to go, and as you know, I've got, you know, a few links in this sort of space. I think you are going to go into two camps. There'll be and I see it a lot because unfortunately at the moment I was having a conversation with a guy at the weekend who basically sent me three, being blunt, shit messages on LinkedIn. It was
Yeah.
automated crap, and I was
Yeah.
like, this isn't good selling. This
You're
is
part of a
crap.
cadence. You're part of
Yeah, and it just looked like I was the same person. I was another notch on the bedpost, and I said to him,
yeah,
that's not value." And all of it was asking for my time before I was ready. And I was like, "This is crap. If you
yeah.
want a prospect with value, you need to be able to look at that person. What do I know about Dan? Let me have a little look at it. Oh, I know Dan's got a dog, or I know Dan supports this football team, or I know that Dan's worked at Inflection Point for 6 years. And to be able to then go and say, hey Dan, you know, 6 years in at Inflection Point, what's the one thing you've learned? And to make that person go, all right, so they've looked at me, not just another number. And I think to me, personalization in outreach is critical. It's got to make that person think, they get me, they understand who I am, rather than it just being, oh, I'm just another number on that they're going to call today. And that's where I think the difference will be in the coming years. And the
I
challenge
most
is, as
certainly
you
will.
go bigger up the scale, you're going to need to get people to go, it feels like hard work, but if you want to generate business, as we've talked about ourselves, they either come to you or you go to them. Well, the
Yeah.
only way you can go to them is by going in with an approach that's a bit more personalised. And but a lot of people say no, totally rubbish. You know, a lot of people disagree with me and say no, we just need to throw 100 darts at the wall, hope one of them sticks. But for me,
And you know what? I think there's still you're kind of bluebird hunting at that point. You know, you're playing the odds, and the odds aren't really in your favor. You know, it's a war of attrition doing that kind of stuff. You know, you're as you say, throwing enough shit at the wall, and hopefully some of it will stick. I mean, look, we've all done it back in the day. I certainly did, and you know, I think I mean, you know, we've got two business development people at Inflection Point that have just started, and their approaches are both very different, both incredibly valid. But it's surprising the younger of the two is kind of he hacks the algorithm. You know, he understands the how to hack LinkedIn to get the posts, to get the reposts, you know, or whatever it is. I'm old, I can't keep up with the wording now, but
yeah,
whereas
yeah,
the other new business person, she's much more like me. You know, it's like, right, war of attrition. Somebody's going to speak to me today. Because when they do have that call, they're good enough sales professionals that they can hold court. And it's
yeah,
all about holding court. You know, it's
yeah.
all about creating your personality. And, you know, I will really stand by that. If you've got a personality, think about it in your own sort of personal life. You know, if you're the sort of person that I wouldn't even say life and soul of the party because that's a bit sort of old fashioned. But if you're the sort of person that can articulate a story well and people want to, you know, hear your story, then you, with some training, you could adapt yourself to be a good sales
Yeah.
professional.
Well, I'm releasing funny enough this afternoon. I'm releasing a video on how anyone can move into sales, and I actually, you know, I'm talking about it. You know, I'm saying to people that are maybe in customer service roles or in let's call it even working at McDonald's, for example, where where they work, nothing against working at McDonald's, but somewhere in it working in a fast food chain and they're not happy with the hours. And I've said to you can move into sales
Yeah.
because what sales is about is being curious and building those skills and being able to communicate, right? As we talked about, it's about being able to communicate effectively. Just out of interest, though, you've obviously engaged with lots of different people. What are some of the big mistakes you've seen from people that have either worked for you or worked with you? That some of the sales mistakes that people make that are common that probably people listening to this will will go, okay, I need to make sure I don't do that.
So these are mistakes that I've made personally, and believe me, I've made a lot.
Same here. I'm in the same place.
Yeah, I mean, there's a really, really, really important one. I can't remember the guy's name. I can't remember the company name. But I got into a bit of a rut when I joined Star Internet of, putting in the monthly call. Hey, how's it going? Have you looked at the quote? Blah, blah, blah. And again, modern IT tools, when we send a quote to a customer, we can tell when they've opened it, right? Yeah. Years ago, we used to have to fax a quote to them, And I remember that, speaking to this MD, hi, it's Dan from Star, have you had a look at the quote yet? No, not yet. I'll look at it next week. Call me then. Ring in next week. And it went on a probably 2-3 month cycle.
Yeah.
And he taught me one of the most valuable lessons ever. I rang him up one day and he said, look, mate, I'm really sorry. I've been literally taking the piss. He said, I signed with somebody 3 months ago. And I was like, what? How come? And he said, you know what? You never asked me for the order. You just rang up, gave me the same pitch. Have you looked at the quote? No, I'll call you next week. He said the other guy from the other provider asked me for the order. They closed me. You didn't. And that has stuck with me. And that must have been in, blimey, 1999. And I still remember it to this day.
Really?
Yeah.
So maybe a key is to make sure you ask for the order at the right time, I assume, rather than
at the right time.
Yeah. What else do you see? What are some of the mistakes that you see other people making in sales that you've?
Yeah. So one thing that I've definitely done before is when you're trying to build rapport with somebody, and something that worked with a particular person doesn't necessarily work with the other one. And I've gone into new opportunities using the same, hey, how's it going? That worked with the last prospect, doesn't work with this prospect. And you're like oil and water, and again, I get a lot of recruitment people ring me, and the way they talk, they think they're my best mate. That's an instant put off. It really annoys me. Build up slowly. Again, I think it was you that mentioned it the other day. It's a bit like dating. You don't ask for marriage on the first date. You've got to get to know people, get to know what makes them tick.
Couldn't agree more. I've done a video on this on 4 terms that and if anyone's listening to this, when you want to sell to me or to Dan, then when they call me mate on the phone in the first conversation, I'm literally like, and people might think, I'm just being a real weirdo. It's like, mate, I've been hello, buddy, how are you? Buddy, I'm like, I'm not an elf from I'm not Will Ferrell. I'm not Will Ferrell. I'm like, like when they stop. And it's so if you're listening to watching this, just be really careful about your language early doors. It doesn't mean you have to use be overly posh, but just be good afternoon, sir, if you're not sure their name, or ideally you should know their name. Good afternoon, Dan, or good morning, Dan.
Yeah.
Just use small things like that.
Hi, mate. You're not my mate.
Yeah, and it's a terrible way to open a sales call. Please, if you're doing this with hello mate, hello buddy, hello fella, hi fella, how you doing? I'm not your fella.
That's an instant hang up for me.
Exactly. And if you get a customer that then says, oh yeah, you can call me mate, no problem, then fine, that's fine. You have the permission then, but don't do it off the bat. And I think a lot of salespeople come in a bit cocky and act like that, don't they? That they feel that they can have those type of conversations when it's just not going to look good for you.
I think the buying market has definitely changed. That's one thing that has definitely changed is the buying market. And as I said earlier, it's certainly in the industry that we're in, which is service based, you've got buyers are so much more informed now. They can read Trustpilot reviews. They can go on the internet. They can go to Reddit. Of all places. Yeah. And I'm with such and such provider, and we keep having these problems. And before you know it, there's a whole thread. Oh yeah, we're with that provider, and they keep doing this, they keep doing that as well. And before you know it, you've got to make sure that you know what you're doing, because you get a bad review or there's a bad thread that gets started. Trustpilot is another one. So you've got to be on your A game all the time these days, because the buying intelligence is so much higher than it was years ago.
And do you find this is, obviously this is, about selling IT. So selling IT, you guys are, Inflection Point do a great offer, a great service, and you sell sort of. But what are some of the biggest barriers you find to people buying IT services now or managed services now, for example? And what are is there any one or two tips that you would give to anyone that's listening to this? I'm selling IT that you use to overcome those.
Yeah, so you've always got, price is always a concern, but if people are quibbling on price, there's two things that have happened. They've either found another competitor or another vendor who are maybe doing something quite different. So we're not likening apples and apples, or they're just literally kind of shopping around and they're not really serious players, If you can get that airtime with them to show the value, demonstrate the work, back it up with things like case studies, back it up with things like testimonials and things like that, and then you can, there's techniques you can use like FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, which I think is an old IBM technique. You can apply things like that, but it's, again, there's a really great thing I was taught very early on. When you start out at anything, you are consciously incompetent, okay? They're like driving. You're all fingers and thumbs and pedals and all over the place. But the more that you apply your craft and your trade and your art, because selling is an art, you become unconsciously competent,
Yeah.
Now think about getting in a car, or think about, I don't know, making a meal. You've made the spaghetti bolognese 100 times, you know how to do it, right? And, give yourself time to learn your trade, and you've got to be malleable, obviously, but you've got to be engaged and focused and create your own personality. That people by people thing is, it's been done to death, but it really, really matters.
Yeah, and see if you can, and also one of the things I talk to people about is if you're half prospecting, and let's say you're prospecting on cold, be a bit personal on the phone or the video. So you can do, there's great tools like Loom or Vidyard now where you can do a video and say, hey, so and so, look, I found out a bit more about you. I see that your company's doing this, and I see that you're currently working with this provider. Look, they're a great provider, but here's 2 or 3 things to consider just while you're thinking about maybe another option.
That's what we do.
And just do those sort of elements of video and make people think, okay, that person's real. They've made the effort. I think it's that element around effort as well that's so critical. So,
well, here's a great one. So we use a system called Loxo, which is really, really clever, and but it's time consuming to create Loxo videos. You've got to do that 1 minute kind of elevator pitch. Hey, such and such, I didn't manage to catch you on the phone, but I got your email address. Hope you don't mind. Here's a quick video from me. This is what I want to talk to you about, right? Now, my outreach guys, sometimes they might have 20 videos to do. So this is going back to the AI question. We found this, well, actually, one of the outreach guys found a great little piece of software, a subscription, but you only record one video. And then instead of saying the person's name, you say, I think it's watermelon or something, right? Type in the person's name, and AI will change your mouth and synthesize your voice to say the person's name. So if you're doing 20, very basic outreach, Vidyard type, they're not getting into specifics. These are basically, can I have 5 minutes of your time? Calls. AI can synthesize your voice and animate the person speaking. So all of a sudden, my outreach guys are not spending a day recording bloody videos. They record the call video, and then AI will change the name of that person. So again, we didn't have that even 2 years ago.
Yeah, but this is it. And this is that saying it's going to change. It's going to evolve, and there's so much more It's going to evolve over time, isn't it? So look, I'm conscious of, we've been chatting for 40 odd minutes now, which has been great. And the conversation's flowed really, which is great as
Yeah.
we're doing. It's been, so a couple of things before, for me, before we finish. What's your greatest ever sale, Dan? And what made it happen? And can you remember it? And what did you do to celebrate it? Because I always love celebrating successes.
Still
Celebrate your
celebrating it.
greatest. You never celebrated it.
I'm still celebrating it.
So you still celebrated it. I love
That was
it.
10 years ago. No, it's really interesting. So an old customer of mine didn't really buy a lot, got on with him really, really well. I'd just come out of all places, a chiropractor appointment, phone rang, and we kind of lost touch a little bit. And this is when I'd set my own company up by then.
Yeah.
So I set my own company up, which I ran for sort of 10, 12 years. And selling IT again. And phone rang and he's like, hey, got this new job, come in and talk to me. And I'm like, couldn't put a name to a voice kind of thing. Anyway, he'd got this job. I won't name the company, but he got this job. And I was like, I'm never going to win that. That's going to go to one of the big integrators. And he's like, no, I've got carte blanche. I want to work with people I trust, people I know, people I get on with, right?
Yeah.
So he remembered me from all those years previous, got my number. And and I was just, the company that I ran, it was only me, it was a one-man band, basically doing IT hardware selling. And that deal turned into, I think, turnover was about just shy of $1 million.
Wow.
Yeah, just shy of $1 million. Complete hardware refresh. It was like a 3-month campaign to refresh all of their laptops, networking equipment, absolutely everything. And because I asked the question, because I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm a one-man band, I'm never going to be able to get credit with suppliers. And because of the rapport that I built with them, they paid me up front.
Right.
They paid me nearly £1 million up front. Okay.
Wow, there you go. That is a sale. So obviously you're still celebrating now, but what did you do on the day? I mean that evening when I must have had some sort of celebration. Come on,
well, to be honest, it was kind of, I mean, I was literally getting up at sort of 4 a.m, going to bed late at night, trying to process all the orders. There were so many. So I think when the deal came in, I went out for a few drinks. I think I went to dinner. I went to one of the nicest restaurants in Cheltenham and got pretty pissed, I think.
Good man, I like it. So.
I think, but no, it was, it solved the problem. They saved a load of money by going through me, which was key to that. Everybody was really happy. But yeah, I think the deal was something in the region of like £980,000. Yeah.
Wow, incredible.
So that was the biggest one I've ever done.
There you go. So we might make this podcast how I achieved the £980,000 IT sale. So yeah, call it that. But so look, Dan, it's been brilliant to chat to you, and thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
Before we go, then, just a final, finish before, and anyone again. Obviously, firstly, people, how can they reach out to you? Can connect on LinkedIn. I'm guessing he's
Dan Hicks on LinkedIn. Yeah, absolutely. You'll see in my bio, I talk about IT and all that kind of stuff. Come and say hi. If you've got, I'm certainly not a sales trainer or coach or anything. That's your bag. But if anyone's got, a question about IT sales, just reach out. I may have come across the situation before.
I think I definitely would do that, and I think that's it's great that you've done it, Dan. Because I think you're right. I mean, I'm obviously we have slightly different roles, but at the end of the day, you're selling IT services every single day. So if you're in this industry, if you're maybe you're someone that's a bit younger or a bit older, or whatever, that's going through a challenge, reach out to Dan to connect. So it's Dan Hicks on LinkedIn. Yeah. Obviously, you're happy for people to connect to you. Basically, provided they sell to you straight away and call you mate or buddy, then you're okay.
If you call me mate or buddy, I will ignore you. But if inflection point is always looking for partnerships, or if you're looking to outsource your IT, or your cybersecurity, come talk to us. But yeah, I'm very reachable. And I'm always happy to have a conversation with people that want to learn, want to solve a problem.
Love it. Look, And I think, a couple of things for me just to sort of finish off, and before I'm going to ask you one more question before I go, which is, love these phrases: understand the person, understand the problem.
I made that up, by the way, on the call.
Well, I mean, do you know what? It's a great made up element to use, and also listen with fascination. I think is another great one to use. And look, you've got so much experience. You've been in sales a long time. And I think that's the other thing for me around both of us, and we talked about this before, is we've both also got that desire to learn, and that desire to stay ahead of the curve, and to continue to feel. So, I was going to ask you, is there any final, advice that you'd give to anyone sort of listening around learning, around developing their skills, around, you've developed your skills over time. Is there any one tip that you'd give them just to enable them just to keep ahead of the curve?
Yeah, it goes back to create your own persona, create your own identity. Don't just be another sales guy that's been through a sales training program. I'm out of touch with a lot of them now, but sales coaching, I think, is a bit different. But the sort of Neil Rackham school, the spins. I can't remember if it was spin selling, but you could tell who'd gone through that. And they still didn't have a personality, Create your own brand. Somebody that somebody wants to spend their time with, which will ultimately result in somebody wanting to spend their money with.
Yeah, brilliant. Love it. Look, incredible advice, and thank you so much for sharing your time, Dan. You've been brilliant today. Lots of insights, so many gold nuggets there that I really enjoyed as well. And look, we'll share the podcast out, and people can connect with you to go from there and have a little look at Inflection Point, what you guys do. But look, thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you. Time flies by when you're having fun, but
it does.
It goes quite quickly. We can talk with us older age. I'm a bit older than you, I think, but us older age sales guys, then we can talk for a while. But look, great to speak to you, Dan. Absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, James. Take care.
So that was Dan Hicks from Inflection Point. What a brilliant episode. Fantastic. So many really nuggets of gold. Love that phrase that Dan said there. Understand the person, understand the problem. Lots of ideas on how to use AI and tools to get more utilised time more effectively as well. So hope you've enjoyed that from Dan. And look, if you have enjoyed the podcast, please like it and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you share it with other people, and let's get more and more people getting the sales results we want them to have over time. So that's it for this week. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you soon. Take care.